Hi everyone, I'm Brittany, the host of the Shed podcast and a health coach here at Shed. If you have ever started a workout routine with the absolute best intentions, only to fall off a few weeks later, you are not alone. In today's episode, we're talking about how to create an exercise routine that actually sticks. No shame, no extreme plans, and no all or nothing thinking. Just a realistic, compassionate approach to building consistency one step at a time. Whether you're starting fresh with this whole exercise thing, getting back into it, or trying to make movement feel like a part of your life instead of a chore, this one's for you. Joining me today is Gina, a health coach here at Shed. She's helped countless clients build routines that feel doable, aligned, and sustainable. And today, she's sharing some of the most effective strategies and mindset reframes to help you stay consistent, no matter where you're starting from. So, without further ado, welcome, Gina.
Thank you. So glad to be here, Brittany.
Excited. This is one of my favorite topics. I think as a health coach myself, something that I hear often is clients saying that their biggest struggle is consistency. And so my question for you is, in your experience with working with countless clients, successfully integrate a consistent exercise routine, is inconsistency with exercise really about lack of discipline, willpower, or motivation?
It is definitely not about willpower. In most cases, consistency or inconsistency isn't a willpower problem, it's a strategy or scheduling problem. Life is demanding. Most of us are juggling a lot. What some call lack of motivation is often just lack of recovery, clarity, scheduling, planning. So when people feel overwhelmed, it's not that they're lazy, it's just that their plan right now doesn't fit their life.
I love that answer. Like, it's more about the strategy. It's more about the planning. Like, I always like to describe it as a pie of life, and nutrition and exercise and health. Yes, it takes up a good chunk of that pie, but there's also room for the other slices, like relationships and your work and, all the other responsibilities and things that make up our life and our time. Gaining consistency, if it is not willpower and instead it is more the strategy and the planning, what else is kind of that key to consistency?
I think the big thing in consistency is building a system for yourself, but more of not relying on motivation. But I often work with people in baby steps. So I encourage my members to begin with the smallest little thing that they can be successful with. Make the goal so small that you can't fail. I do also give my members a range of things. For example, let's make your goal trying to make it to the gym 1 to 2 times a week instead of every day. So instead of putting things in absolutes, let's give ourselves a range that we can be successful with. And with those small goals, you can make small goals that you can even do at home. For example, it may be walking for 5 minutes, taking a break from your desk. It could be doing some body weight squats while you're brewing your coffee. Basically, any movement that you can do is fantastic, and it all adds up. And the biggest thing I think that is important for people is to ditch that all or nothing mindset. So we want to get rid of, I needed to go to the gym and do a half an hour of cardio and 45 minutes of weight and do a split routine. We don't need to do all that to get in shape and be healthy. All or something gets you further in the long term.
I love that. I think because of what diet culture has taught us, right? It's like we either need to be extreme or all out. And so it is that all or nothing mindset that a lot of people struggle with. I know I used to struggle with it myself. And when I did have that all or nothing mindset, consistency was my biggest struggle. I could not stay consistent with both exercise or nutrition for longer than, a week or two or whatever. And it was almost this endless cycle of like, let me start on Monday. And then I would go all in and burn myself out to the point where I didn't want to do anything for a few weeks after that. And what I realized was I was standing in my own way, right? Like I was either seeing it black or white. Um, and I always like to describe the all or nothing type of thinking as like a scale from 0 to 10. And a lot of people see exercise as either a 0 or a 10,
Mhm.
but we forget that there's so many, eight different numbers, eight, nine different numbers in between, right? That we can choose on a daily basis. Some days it might be a 2, some days it might be a 7, depending on what we have going on that day. And a lot of times it is just about showing up in some way rather than, nothing at all. And it does not by any means have to be extreme. And I love what you said, that you can still have success without being at a 10. And in fact, it's actually recommended, and you're probably going to be more successful if you're not always at a 10. That consistency is going to fall into place. So, with kind of thinking about how people can explore exercise that they love instead of viewing it as, work or miserable or a chore, like what are some suggestions or what would you say to people who might say, I hate working out. I don't know how I could possibly ever build a consistent exercise routine?
So a lot of people assume that exercise needs to be miserable to work. But when I hear people say that they hate exercise, what I normally say to them is you haven't found the right exercise for you. And I like to use the example, which is probably aging me, of spinning. Spinning was really popular for a while. And I had friends that loved it. And I would go to spinning and I would get off that seat and think, I am so sore. I am so miserable. I never want to do this again. So the next time they invited me to spinning, I didn't go to spinning. But I do encourage people to find a few things to check out to see what their friends are doing. Some people like yoga. Walking is one of the most underrated exercises that we have. All you have to do is walk, and that's a great starting point. But everybody is really into pickleball right now. Find a friend that plays pickleball. So find something and explore. Try different things. If one thing doesn't work out for you, try something else.
I think that's so important. And I love that you mentioned walking because, as part of my weight loss journey years ago, it really came from not being able to be consistent. That's why I had gained weight. And the consistency, like I mentioned earlier, was from being too extreme or all or nothing, basically. And so I was doing the same thing. Okay, on Monday, I'm going to go to spin class for an hour every single day. And then, maybe I'll even do 2 a days, a couple of days, because I'm really serious about losing weight this time. And I want to, I have the willpower, I have the discipline this time. And eventually, I would fall off of that. But walking was something that I almost just started doing by chance. My mom would go for evening walks and we would just go and talk for an hour.
Mhm.
And I was kind of in like a nothing phase at that time. Like walks didn't count for me at that time as exercise. So it was just something I was doing with my mom. And probably a month, 2 months later, I started seeing the scale go down. And I realized, oh my gosh, the scale is going down and I'm being consistent. There must be something to this, like gentle type of exercise. And so for me, it started really reframing like, movement is exercise. It's good for your body, and anything is contributing to that, type of exercise, and that it's important to integrate it into our life in a realistic way. Are there any recommendations that you have for people who are trying to find a type of movement that's enjoyable for them if they're just beginning with this?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest thing is experiment. So, like we touched on, pick a month and decide maybe once a week I'm going to try something new with one of my friends or something new at the gym. But not only experiment with different types of exercise, but I think it's also important to focus on how you feel after the exercise. Because as we know, sometimes during the exercise, not as fun, but how do you feel after? Do you feel energized? Do you feel euphoric? Do you feel like you met a goal? Um, did it improve my mood? That's your compass on if that exercise is going to be good for you and if that's going to be something that you're going to be able to be consistent with. Enjoyment is a performance enhancer. So that's what makes people come back. So my biggest form of advice is experiment, experiment, experiment.
I think what you just said, it reminds me of the habit loop that we teach within our coaching program. And it's this idea that in order to create a habit that is going to stick, you have to have some type of reward from the action that you're taking. So, most of our clients that we are currently working with are on a GLP-1 medication. And so, my question for you, because I think a GLP-1 is such an awesome tool for people to help almost raise the ceiling, to be able to integrate some of these habits that maybe they really have wanted to for a really long time. They've heard from doctors, they've heard from nutritionists, all the things that exercise is something they need to integrate, but they don't quite know how. And a GLP-1 can really help to raise that ceiling, and a health coach can really come in to, give all the mindset reframes and strategy and really guide you through integrating that. And so I know you have so much experience with GLP-1 people, and also just people who have maybe struggled with integrating exercise in a consistent way, as well as maybe people who are new to exercise on a GLP-1 medication. I would love to hear from you. Is there any client, any member who sticks out to you, who has maybe started from ground zero with exercise or consistency and has built themselves up to being able to be like endlessly consistent with exercise?
Yes, absolutely. I do have one person in mind for that. She is in her late 40s and she has twins, young twins. So she has a very busy day, very busy job. And she struggled for years with weight and energy. And after she started the GLP-1, her hunger signals calmed down. So she felt like she could actually focus on something else other than what am I going to eat next? So for the first time, she had the mental space to start thinking about what can I do for exercise? And we did start with basic walking. One of my favorite suggestions for the members that I work with is go on a color walk, which is a fun walk that they can do either by themselves or with their kids. And I love the color walk because you go out on a walk and you decide, I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm just going to go by myself and I'm going to decide how many things can I find that are purple on my walk? So it puts you into a focused state. So it's almost like a walking meditation. And so she started the color walks by herself, and then she started the color walks with her kids, and they absolutely loved it. Then she started going to a dance class and absolutely loved the dance class. It was a mix of urban dance, and she was embarrassed to say twerking and some other fun stuff. And I absolutely encouraged her to go for it. And she found a community within that group that where she started to go. And she has now progressed so much in that she is now getting her certification for the dance class. So she is now finally on the little end of her certification where she is now going to start teaching other ladies this great dance class where she absolutely has a blast. She found her community, and a lot of that did start with the GLP-1 being able to start to focus on herself. One of the things that she said to me that I always repeat for other clients or members that we have is she told me, Gina, I thought that it only had to do with diet and exercise, but I didn't realize I really needed to work on myself too. And that was one of the things that so many people find out once you start on this journey. It really is a whole person journey. So GLP-1s are just one of the tools that help us in becoming more active again, to focus on ourselves again.
That is what makes people successful. Like everything is so interconnected, and it brings in that topic of finding movement that you love. Like it lit her up. It was something that gave her that positive reinforcement, and she kept wanting to show up more. She's getting her certification in it, which is so awesome. And now she's passing that along to others. And I'm sure that's impacted her life, her kids' lives in so many different ways. And in your experience, and I would love to just hear your perspective on GLP-1s as a tool for helping people integrate some of these habits. Like, what would you say on that? What would you say to people who are maybe considering it?
I don't know why GLP-1s have to be controversial. I think that so many people will watch social media and they'll see somebody say, oh, well, that's cheating if they're taking a GLP-1. But the reality of taking a GLP-1 to assist you in your weight loss is just like any other tool. If you just use one tool in your toolkit, you're not going to get the result that you want. So I could be taking a GLP-1, but if I'm not making behavioral changes that involve changing the way that I eat and changing the way that I work out and changing the way that I handle stress or sleep, I'm not going to be successful at this. So I think it's very, very important that people see this as a tool. And a lot of times, and before we even knew about this fantastic tool, people didn't think about it. Just like I don't think about needing a hammer unless I need to put a picture into the wall. But if this is something that I really need to do and I've tried everything else, then why not use this tool? It removes that mental food noise, as you talked about, and it also makes people more comfortable in their body. I've had many people that I've worked with who say, I just feel like I feel lighter. And it's not just physically lighter, but mentally lighter. They feel lighter. They feel like they have more space, like we talked about. Once we get rid of that food noise and some of those um, cycling thoughts, that they have more time to actually think of, okay, I can do this for exercise, or I can actually plan out a meal without focusing on what's going to come next after that meal. So this is a great tool for behavior change. And we also always have to remember that the medication isn't magic. There's no magic pill, there's no magic injection, but it gives people the mental bandwidth to be able to focus on what matters as far as behavior change. And that's where not only the tools of the GLP-1, but also the tools of coaching as well as intentional habit changing come in.
You just brought up such a great topic point. I got to interview Dr. Niazi a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how do we keep the weight off after a GLP-1. And one of the big takeaways was, well, a very large takeaway was there has to be the medication in conjunction with lifestyle change in order to
Yes.
sustain what you do on a GLP-1. And that's part of why Shed offers health coaching, is because we know the importance of doing that. And we see it as such a tool to lift that ceiling, like I was saying earlier, to be able to create these changes with the help of our health coaches. So I want to kind of get into like what people can expect. And so could you give me an idea of what a realistic results driven exercise routine looks like for someone on a GLP-1?
Sure. Well, as an exercise physiologist, I always tell people that it doesn't matter whether you're on a GLP-1 or not on a GLP-1, but consistency is going to be key when you start an exercise routine. If we are talking about somebody who's starting an exercise routine and they have never done it before, we normally will start with walking. And it is, again, one of the most underrated exercises that we have. So, a realistic, consistent exercise routine with somebody that we may work with is walking on a daily basis and then gradually starting to add in some of those additional things that we find are so important, specifically resistance training. Um, Anytime you lose weight, loss of muscle is a concern. So we always want to make sure that people are doing resistance training, strength training, body weight training, whatever they can to continue to build that muscle, maintain the muscle as they're losing weight. So, with a combination of either walking or some other sort of cardiovascular activity combined with resistance training, and then, of course, flexibility training, balance training as we all age. It's a very holistic approach, but we do need to take it step by step, little by little. And like I said, for GLP-1 users, preserving lean muscle mass is critical. So the sooner somebody is ready to start to resistance train, the better. And then we can start to build from there.
I love that. And I think what's important that you mentioned is we do take that step by step, right? Like, I think for some people, it can feel so overwhelming and daunting that we have to do this, this, this. I know the CDC, we go by CDC recommendations of 150 minutes per week of, cardiovascular activity, and then the 2 days of strength training. And then, of course, as we age, like you said, balance, flexibility, all of those things. In your experience with clients, and I think we've alluded to this a little bit throughout our conversation today, how long can it really take for someone to feel consistent with exercise?
Well, I know that there's a saying out there that said it takes 21 days to build a habit, but in my experience, that's not always true. I really think that it can take between 6 and 12 weeks of consistent effort, especially if you're doing a huge behavior change, like adding an exercise when you never have before, for this change to start to feel familiar, for it to start to feel like a habit. Consistency is absolutely a skill. It's something that we all need to work on. It's something that, again, you have to show up over and over every single day. So I like to say it's a skill, not a character trait. So it takes repetition.
Repetition is huge. I don't know if you've ever read Atomic Habits. I'm sure you
Of
have,
course.
but yeah, I remember that paragraph, line, whatever he wrote was so, it stood out so much to me because we do hear things about it takes this many days or it takes this much time. And I think it's less about the days or the weeks or all those sorts of things. And it's more about the repetition. And the way that you get repetition is by doing all the things we talked about and you so beautifully stated, which is positive reinforcement, focusing on how did that thing make me feel, exploring, like testing out different things. That is almost phase one, right? To find those things that you can be repetitive with. And then after that, it's kind of looking at the schedule and, how many days is realistic for me? What times of the day is most realistic for me? I know
Mhm.
I have a little 2 year old, and so I try to wake up way before she wakes up because that's the only time I know for sure that I can get something in. And so it's thinking about your life in that way. Where can I slot in time? Sometimes I get my walking pad and put it under my desk during a meeting if I'm just listening in, and I can get my steps like 1 hour, just walking on my walking pad. So typically, luckily, I was on a good place in my journey, but typically I would freak out if I missed a week or two after I had been so consistent for so long. I would be afraid that I would gain the weight back or all of my hard work would totally go to waste. What do you have to say to people who maybe have that mindset about missing a week or two?
I always tell people life happens. We cannot control everything. And it's important to know that your body also remembers. So if you have to take a week or two off of working out, or even longer, for example, if you just had a baby, your body's going to remember. When you come back, start back where you left off if you are able to. If you're not able to, it's okay to step it down a little bit and start to build back up. Just know that your body's not going to forget what you did for it. Just know that all of the hard work that you put in before is not all for nothing, but you just can continue to come back. And many times, once you take a little break like that or a longer break like that, you can come back stronger. If you look at, for example, professional athletes, they will often take weeks off for recovery. And then they come back. When they come back, they're stronger and they perform better. So just think of it as a little bit of recovery time and then come back stronger when you come back.
Yeah. I think having that broader perspective on consistency instead of like, I need to be consistent, these 3 months, it's like, I need to be consistent for the rest of my life. And when we view it in that perspective, it's okay to, during Christmas time, maybe I have tons of stuff going on and like, I'm just going on walks here and there with my family or that sort of thing. And that's okay. Or when you have a baby, right? Like you are focused on that and then the recovery. And of course, you want to be doing little movements or stretches or pelvic floor stuff or that sort of thing. But that in that phase of your life is perfectly fine, knowing that eventually you will get back up. Well, Gina, thank you so much. This conversation was awesome. I think it's going to help people so much with just a mindset reframe on what consistency really is when it comes to exercise. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you concerned about the side effects of a GLP-1 medication? Rightly so. GLP-1 Revive was designed specifically for GLP-1 medication users to help minimize those side effects like nausea, bloating, fatigue, and digestive discomfort, so you can stay focused on your weight loss and health goals. Feel your absolute best on your journey with 10% off GLP-1 Revive today using code POD10, POD10.